Greetings to all of our viewers. You're tuned into Tigrai Media House, and this is our daily English news. The headlines today: U.S. Senator presses Biden administration on the ongoing genocide and determination for conflict within the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Faced with a genocide, a Tigrayan living in Canada currently struggles to hold on to her identity, and MSF seeks answers for the Ethiopian government after a new media report on the killing of its staff. The main stories for today: U.S. Senator presses Biden administration on the genocide determination for the conflict in the ongoing war in Tigray, Ethiopia. U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, today called on the President Joe Biden to do the assessment, citing evidence and reports of extrajudicial killings, massacres, sexual gender-based violence, forced displacement, and continued efforts to block humanitarian access aid from reaching civilians that are in extreme need. Chairman Menendez reinforced the need for the Department of State to make a long overdue determination about the systematic campaign of the destruction. He mentioned previous commitments he received from the Biden administration officials to determine whether the legal standard had been met in the course of the conflict in Ethiopia. He continues to say, "I continue to assert the Ethiopian officials have committed genocide in Tigray, and I strongly urge this administration to make its own assessment as soon as possible." It appears that the Department of State decided not to pursue this question so as to avoid stating publicly what we all have witnessed. The atrocities that have been taking place in Ethiopia bear the hallmarks of war crimes or crimes against humanity, as Menendez noted. He recognized that President Biden's initial effort to respond to the crisis, including his decision to impose visa restrictions, pause some U.S. assistance, and an issue on executive order to hold accountable those responsible for prolonging this conflict in Ethiopia. Chairman Menendez also called on the administration to take additional steps to increase the diplomatic pressure, including deciding whether Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed should be invited to participate in the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit that is slated for later this year. He added the pursuit of the U.S. strategic interest at the expense of Ethiopian people and a clear statement of fact flies in the face of core American values, and it is ultimately unsustainable. Senator Bob Menendez stated accountability for atrocities must be pursued regardless of how high-ranking those responsible may be. I stand ready to partner with you on this and other matters related to the region. Matthyas, a patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, has strongly denounced the barbaric acts of the burning ethnic Tigrayans to death that took place last week in Ethiopia's Benishangul Gumuz region. Have a listen.
This act is shunned even by barbarians. It is unprecedented brutality and hate that knows no boundary. The country is going deeper and deeper in crisis. The ongoing effort to annihilate Tigrayans is affecting everybody. I am deeply saddened by what happened. I have not had the opportunity to air my views.
Various religious institutions have also, political parties and civic society organizations, denounced the barbaric act that took place in the region. The Oromo Liberation Front and its military wing disclosed the Amhara Forces slit the throat of a pregnant Oromo woman that was abducted and also abducted 18 students. A press release by the Oromo Liberation Front and its military wing OLA disclosed that on the 15th of March 2022, Birhana Raksa, a pregnant woman and mother of 7, was brutally murdered by cutting her throat with a knife. The statement said that yet another round of Stone Age savagery, which is becoming a signature act of atrocities being committed by the Amhara Forces. According to the statement, the act of the barbarism took place in Djibouti Warada of Benishangul Gumuz region, where members of the same R group last week were involved in the burning alive of Tigrayan civilians. Only 2 days later, in the morning hours of the 17th of March 2022, Amhara Forces, again operating in Benishangul Gumuz region, debused and abducted 18 Oromo students. The abductees were on their way to school in the region's Djibouti Warada area at a place known to locals as Bishan Adi of Matakhal zone in the region. TMH sources from the area also confirmed that the report mentioned the name of 16 of the victims so far identified. The statement also said that the state-sponsored genocide by Abiy Ahmed and extremist Amhara forces on the Oromo, Tigray, and the native population has continued in full swing, with the Benishangul Gumuz region particularly becoming a staging ground for state forces of terror. The Ethiopian National Defense Forces, the Amhara Special Forces, and the organized Amhara bandits called Fano are responsible for most of the atrocities. These sources called on concerned citizens to sound their voice to avoid similar fate befalling on the abductees. The Fano militia and the Amhara Special Forces have gained notoriety as masters in gruesome mass murders. As we move on to our humanitarian update within the region, OSHA says families in Tigray are exhausting all remaining means to access food. According to Humanitarian Update by the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, 3/4 of the population reported to be using extremely coping strategies to survive. The level of food insecurity is expected to worsen in the coming months as remaining food stocks from last harvest, which has also half of the normal yearly production, gets depleted. Humanitarian assistance is also not delivered at a scale on time due to the blockade. Meanwhile, sources indicate that the aid convoy, which has included 20 trucks of goods, 3 fuel tankers, heading to Tigray, was attacked and food looted in the Afar-controlled part of Zone 2. Drivers were assaulted. No aid trucks have entered Tigray since mid-December, wrote William Davidson, who's an International Crisis Group senior analyst, on his official Twitter account. OSHA said that what's next planting on the season month away, only 4,000 tons of improved seeds, 49,000 tons of required, is available in Tigray. The update indicated that the prospects are bleak unless immediate accession is taken in action to avail seed and fertilizers to farmers in Tigray on time. It added the implication of the third consecutive poor agriculture season will be devastating on the lives and the livelihoods of the conflict-affected population. There was no amount of emergency agriculture inputs, such as seeds, fertilizers, and agrochemicals into Tigray region since the beginning of July 2021. At present, only 4,000 tons of the improved seed of total of 49 that's needed is currently available. OSHA disclosed the agreement, and the arrangement is being finalized to transport seeds, fertilizers, and animal feed from Addis Ababa through air cargo. While OSHA reports the humanitarian need and the dire access blocked, WHO says 95 metric tons of medical supplies are ready for Tigray, but no permission has been given yet. Dr. Tedros Adhanom, Director General of the World Health Organization, told the press this afternoon that WHO and its partners have readied additional 95 metric tons of supplies to the war-torn, blockaded Tigray, but no permission has been given yet. Dr. Tedros said that 6 million people in Tigray, where about 3/4 of health facilities assessed by WHO have been damaged or destroyed. They have been under blockade by the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean forces for almost 500 days, over 500 days, and sealed off from the outside world. Here's a life briefing. Let's take a listen.
There is almost no fuel, no cash, and no communications. No food aid has been delivered since the middle of December. 83% of the population is food insecure. Our partners are running out of what little food they have and the fuel to transport it. About 3/4 of health facilities assessed by WHO have been damaged or destroyed. In February, WHO airlifted more than 33 metric tons of medicines and other supplies to Tigray, enough for 300,000 people. the first time we have been able to deliver supplies since July last year.
And according to the director, there's nowhere on earth currently where the health of millions and millions of people is more under threat than in Tigray, and the Director General of the World Health said this in his briefing. Let's take a listen.
Yes, I'm from Tigray, and this crisis affects me, my family and my friends very personally. But as the Director General of WHO, I have a duty to protect and promote health wherever it's under threat. And there is nowhere on earth where the health of millions of people is more under threat than in Tigray.
WHO estimates that 2,200 metric tons of emergency health supplies are needed to respond to urgent health needs in Tigray, and only 117 metric tons of the 2,000 needed have been delivered, and that's just less than 1% of what is actually required. According to the UN, lack of fuel and commercial supplies has prompted a sharp increase of commodity prices such as flour and beans by 414% and 620%, respectively. The UN added that the household food consumption has drastically decreased, prompting an increase in malnutrition and rates among the children and pregnant women and lactating women being extremely high. Faced with a genocide, a Tigrayan living in Canada has struggled to hold on to her identity. Waini Abraha fled her locality of Irob in Tigray region of Ethiopia during her teens at the height of the Ethio-Eritrean War of 1998 to 2000. She shares how the war, the current genocide in Ethiopia of Tigray region, has devastated her indigenous community's way of being and living normal. Waini said due to the ongoing genocidal war, the very fabric of her indigenous societies have been dismantled. For over a year, the already vulnerable Irob community has suffered at the hands of the occupying Eritrean forces. Food aid has been blocked, their livestock stolen or even destroyed. She said her ancestral land, culture, language, diversity, and ecosystems are just threatened completely. We are beyond terrified that our communities cannot survive the ongoing heinous atrocities committed against Tigray, particularly against such a small Irob population, she emphasized. The Irob community is facing an existential threat and are occupied by the Eritrean forces currently. Our destiny is in the hands of our enemy. Our very existence is at stake, Waini said. She also noted that the nation she and her community once proudly identified with is now synonymous with weaponized rape, genocide, famine, and simple lawlessness. Waini said she has personally lost too many family members to count, adding, however, sad that some Ethiopians did not believe in her loss unless they were Tigrayans themselves. For many Tigrayans like myself, this is utter lack of empathy for Tigrayans was the end of proud identity that was rooted in our Ethiopian culture, she underlined. Being uprooted during her childhood, Waini's identity is a complex weave with strands of multiple origins. The easiest identity to take on would have been that of a human being or a global citizen, but society always finds a way to compartmentalize your identity and attach meaning to it. According to Waini, the genocide that is taking place in Tigray currently and the existential threat posed on the people of Irob specifically have her holding on to her Tigrayan Irob identity as tight as possible to make sure that the strand is never lost. Communication blockouts take a heavy emotional toll on Tigrayans whole. Tigrayans in Addis Ababa told the BBC that the absence of phone line communications and internet in Tigray has left many in the dark regarding their families and their friends. They have no way of knowing if their loved ones are safe or even simply alive. It is difficult to know if loved ones back in Tigray are safe, and Tigrayans outside of Tigray have been told through the ICRC of deaths of family members. In a radio documentary produced by Beatrice Pickup, a BBC investigated the impacts of communication blockout on people's lives. Athnaf Brahana, who studies digital rights at the Center for Rights and Democracy, argues that shutdowns, instead of preventing the spread of violence as governments often claim, could in fact deter violations from being reported, as in the case that is currently happening in Tigray and Oromia regions. The northern state of Tigray has been subjected to communication blackout for almost 16 months now. Tigrayan refugees in Djibouti say that they are going through untold suffering in the wilderness of Holhol refugee camp. Tigrayan refugees, ranging from 6 months children to 70-year-old elderly, are sheltered in Holhol refugee camp in Djibouti in a remote desert area with no access to water or enough food. A sources told Tigray media that 2 Tigrayan women were also raped by Djiboutian police guarding a previous waiting center. The police authorities have not taken any action against these rapists. There are over 200 Tigrayan refugees, including drivers of Trans Ethiopia, in the camp, but most of them have left for different destinations out of desperation and due to the harsh conditions that they were forced to live in the camp. MSF seeks answers from the Ethiopian government after a new media report on the killing of its staff came out. Ethiopia, with 19 deaths in 2021, including 3 of them which were MSF workers gunned down in Tigray's central zone, is the world's deadliest country for aid workers, more than Afghanistan, Syria, or Congo now. Timnit Bayru presents the details from an expose by the New York Times.
3 employees of Doctors Without Borders set out to rescue the wounded in a war zone in northern Ethiopia. Their fate shows the treacherous path for many aid workers in conflict zones. As the fight intensified in northern Ethiopia, in June last year, 3 aid workers from Doctors Without Borders jumped into their 4-wheel drive and raced across the battle-scarred landscape searching for casualties. Hours later, they vanished. The aid workers stopped answering their satellite phone. A tracking device showed their vehicle making a sudden U-turn, then stopping. Colleagues frantically tried to locate them. The next day, they were found dead, their bullet-riddled bodies sprawled on a dusty roadside near their burned-out vehicle. Maria Hernandez, a 35-year-old Spaniard and conflict veteran, in blood-stained white bib with the Doctors Without Borders logo. Johannes Halafum, a 32-year-old Tigrian medic, face down in the dirt, and their Tigrian driver, Tedros Gabramariam, 31, lying on the road about 300 yards away. Doctors Without Borders, widely known by its French name, Médecins Sans Frontières, immediately denounced the killings as brutal murder, but did not identify any culprit. Now, one is coming into view. Investigators, senior aid officials, and Ethiopian soldiers interviewed by The Times said 3 aid workers were gunned down by retreating Ethiopian government troops on the orders of a commander who was infuriated to find them in active combat zone. Finish them off, he said Captain Yetenberg Tasfai of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, who said he heard the command over the radio. The aid workers had their hands over their heads when they were shot, according to another soldier who witnessed the killings. The brutal slaying in the northern region of Tigray, where a feud between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the northern region of Tigray erupted into war in November 2020, that has been accompanied by reports of massacres, sexual assault, ethnic cleansing, and other likely war crimes. The atrocities are not just in Tigray. A gruesome video that circulated recently showed Ethiopian security forces burning alive 3 men believed to be ethnic Tigrayans in western region of Benishangul Gumuz. But the killing of the 3 Doctors Without Borders employees underscored the specific perils facing aid workers in Ethiopia, where hunger and dislocation threaten millions even as the government seems to treat aid groups as enemies rather than allies. Since last July, respected aid groups have been accused of running guns to the Tigrayan forces. Senior United Nations officials have been expelled from Ethiopia, and the government imposed a punishing blockade on the region that has cut off food supplies to 5 million needy people, the UN says. Ethiopia is the world's deadliest country for aid workers, with 19 deaths in 2021, more than Afghanistan, Syria, or Congo, according to the Aid Worker Security Database, a compilation of data on attacks. Local employees bear the greatest risk. Of the 129 aid workers who died around the world last year, only 3 were international staff, including Ms. Hernandez. The offices of Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Attorney General, and military spokesperson did not respond to questions for this article.
Our final news for today, Tigray Action Committee, also known as Tigray Act, has just released a statement on their official Twitter account for an urgent call to action. They're asking for the support of Tigrayan diasporas living in the states, but more specifically in the southern states of Maryland, Florida, Utah, Ohio, Virginia, Texas, and South Dakota to help pass the Peace and Democracy Promotion Act of 2021. This bill, known as S-3199, that was introduced by Senator Bob Menendez, Senator Jim Risch, and Senator Chris Coons, restricts assistance to the Ethiopian security services and other financing of the government of Ethiopia, exempting life-saving humanitarian assistance. Ceases of offensive operations in northern Ethiopia, takes steps toward genuine national dialogue, allowing unfettered humanitarian access and cooperation with independent investigation of all the atrocities and the crimes that were committed against human civilians in Tigray. Tigray Acts Committee urges all of you to contact and email your local senators and support and help pass this bill for the peace and the stability of Ethiopia. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.